Hi, in this video we demonstrate how to set up a new user for authentication and authorization with the API server of our Kubernetes clusters. So let's navigate to our terminal, and first let's create a new namespace. Then let's create a new subdirectory, and let's cd into this new subdirectory. Now let's create the new user. His name is Bob. Hello, Bob. Let's also set up a password for Bob. So we need to type the password. And one more time. Okay, it was updated successfully. Then with the OpenSSL tool, we are going to create a key. Now the key has been generated, and with the same OpenSSL tool, we are going to create a certificate signing request for Bob. Now with this request created, we need to create a certificate signing request resource of the Kubernetes cluster. So for that, we need to set up a definition manifest. Now there's one field that we're not going to fill out just yet, the request itself. So what we will do, we will save the file as such. We will extract this request and then return to the file to paste this entire value into the file. So select from the very first character all the way to the double equal sign. Then open the signing request YAML file one more time. Go to the request line. Delete the existing content of that line. And then paste the request from before. And now we can save this. And now we can safely create the signing request. Once the signing request is created, let's list certificate signing requests to ensure that it has been created. So Bob has a certificate signing request requested by the Minikube user, and it is still in a pending state. And now the next step is to approve Bob's certificate signing request. It has been approved, but let's also list the request one more time to see that the condition has changed to approved and issued. Now let's extract it and store it into an actual certificate file. So bob.crt is Bob's certificate file. And this is Bob's certificate. Now that the key for Bob has been generated and the certificate is being created as well, we are ready to set up our kubeconfig file. First, we need to add Bob's credentials to the kubeconfig file, his certificate and his key. Then what we need to do is set up a context for Bob, a binding between the Minikube cluster, the new namespace, and the user Bob, which will be used for access control policies. Now let's review the kubeconfig file, and we will see that originally we only had the Minikube user. Now we have an additional user, user Bob. Then in the context area, we have the original context, the Minikube context, and the new Bob context, while the cluster is just one, the Minikube cluster. So now let's create a new deployment in our new namespace. So a new deployment Nginx in the LFS 158 namespace. So from the Bob context, so assuming Bob's identity, let's try to list pods in the LFS 158 namespace. Now, because Bob doesn't have any permissions in the cluster, access is forbidden. So Bob cannot do anything at this moment. So let's create some role-based access control policies. So first we are going to create a role that grants read-only access to users, get watch list. So let's exit. Well, save and exit. We will create this role with the kubectl create command. And then what we're going to do next is create a role binding. First, we need to create a role binding resource. So this is the definition file that binds the pod reader user or role with user Bob. It's very simple. Save and exit. We create this with the kubectl create command. And one more time we validate to see whether from the Bob context we can list pods in the LFS 158 namespace. And as it turns out that after the access control policy has been set and user Bob has been granted some restricted permissions in the cluster, now user Bob is able to list pods in the LFS 158 namespace. So this concludes our video. Thank you very much for watching. Join me in the next one.